Blood dripped from the alien's serrated claws as it stepped into the arena, its 8-foot frame casting an elongated shadow across the dust-covered ground. The creature's scaled skin reflected the harsh artificial lights overhead, revealing a patchwork of battle scars and tribal markings that told stories of countless hunts. Arena spectators, humans and aliens alike, fell silent as the predator's amber eyes scanned the crowd, searching for its next victim. Patrick Evans felt sweat beading on his forehead as he watched from the front row. This wasn't how his diplomatic mission to Nexus Station was supposed to go. As Earth's newly appointed ambassador to the Galactic Confederation, he had arrived just 3 days ago, eager to strengthen humanity's tenuous position among the stars. Now he found himself witnessing what appeared to be ritual combat in an underground arena he'd been brought to by Zerel, his assigned cultural liaison. "What exactly am I watching?" Patrick whispered to Zerel, whose 4 eyes blinked independently as the insectoid alien leaned closer. "The Krazak warrior performs the ritual of selection," Zerel explained, the translator device pinned to Patrick's collar converting the clicks and chirps into English. "It is tradition before the hunt. The predator chooses one from the crowd to face in combat." Patrick's stomach turned. "You brought me to watch an execution, not execution. Challenge." Zerel's antennae twitched. "It is considered a great honor to be selected." The Krazak predator moved forward, its muscular body flowing with predatory grace. Twin rows of spines along its back rose and fell with each breath. The creature stopped, its head swiveling toward their section of the arena. "Tell me this has safety protocols," Patrick muttered, but Zerel remained ominously silent, the alien's gaze fixed directly on their position. With deliberate movements, it approached, stopping just 10 feet away. Its chest expanded as it drew in a massive breath, and then the predator unleashed a deafening roar that sent spectators scrambling backward. Everyone except a young woman in the 3rd row who stood frozen in terror. The Krazak's attention locked onto her. It flexed its claws, displaying the still wet blood from its previous victim. Patrick didn't think. He moved on instinct, vaulting over the first 2 rows to place himself between the predator and the woman. Behind him, he could hear her rapid breathing, feel the terror radiating from her body. "Stay behind me," Patrick whispered without turning around, his eyes fixed on the alien predator that now studied him with what appeared to be curiosity. The woman's trembling voice came from just inches behind him. "What are you doing? It will kill you." "Probably," Patrick admitted, mind racing to remember anything useful from his diplomatic briefings about Krazak culture. "But I think I might have just stumbled into some kind of ritual, and I'm hoping I can talk our way out of it." The predator tilted its head, regarding Patrick with those unnerving amber eyes. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled with the guttural language. "You interpose, challenge, accepted." The creature's mouth, lined with needle-sharp teeth, opened in what might have been a grin. Zerel appeared at Patrick's side, antennae flat against its head in alarm. "Ambassador Evans, you have just accepted the trial of valor in place of this female. The Krazak hunter will now face you in combat." "That's not what I meant to do," Patrick hissed. "Intention irrelevant," Zerel replied. "You stood between predator and prey. This is the ancient way." The crowd had fallen into a hushed silence, broken only by excited whispers as news spread that a human and Earth ambassador, no less, had entered the ritual. "Can I decline?" Patrick asked, already knowing the answer. "Only by death," Zerel confirmed. "But there is hope. The trial does not always end in killing. If you show sufficient courage, the Krazak may grant mercy." The predator retreated several paces, allowing Patrick space to enter the arena floor. The woman behind him grabbed his arm. "You can't do this," she pleaded. "You don't know what they're capable of." Patrick turned to face her for the first time. She was young, perhaps mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes wide with fear. Her station uniform identified her as part of the maintenance crew. "What's your name?" he asked, Melissa Williams, she answered. Engineering technician, second class. Well, Melissa, I'm Patrick Evans, Earth's new ambassador to the Confederation. He offered a smile that felt far more confident than he actually was. And apparently, I'm also your stand-in for alien gladiatorial combat, not exactly in my job description. Ambassador, her eyes widened further. Sir, you can't, this is insane, agreed, but I don't see many options. Patrick looked back at the waiting predator. Stay here. If this goes badly, find Captain Bennett at the Earth Embassy. Tell him what happened. Before she could protest further, Patrick stepped over the barrier onto the arena floor. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers, jeers, and what sounded like betting exchanges. The Krazak predator watched his approach, its posture relaxed yet coiled with potential energy. Patrick stopped about 15 feet from the creature. He remembered one crucial piece of information from his briefings. Krazak respected formal protocol. I am Patrick Evans, representative of Earth, he announced loudly, hoping his translator was working correctly. I stand in place of the Chosen One and accept your challenge with honor. The predator's spines flared in what Patrick hoped was approval. It thumped a clawed fist against its armored chest. I am Vraxar, hunter of the third claw, bloodline of Teknar. The translator rendered the harsh sounds into clipped English. You show courage, human, you will die with honor. Patrick swallowed hard. Actually, I'd prefer to live with honor if that's an option. Vraxar's response was a blur of motion as he charged. Patrick barely had time to dive to the side, feeling the rush of air as claws swiped through the space where his head had been moments before. He rolled to his feet, adrenaline surging through his system. The crowd roared its approval. Patrick caught a glimpse of Melissa's horrified face at the barrier's edge, and beside her, Zerel gesturing frantically. Ambassador, Zerel called. The ritual allows for chosen weapons. Patrick glanced around and saw a weapons rack at the arena's edge. He sprinted toward it as Vraxar recovered and pursued. Reaching the rack, Patrick grabbed the first thing that looked familiar, a staff about 5 feet long with bladed ends. He turned just in time to block Vraxar's next attack, catching the alien's claws on the staff. The impact nearly tore the weapon from his hands and sent vibrations up his arms. Patrick stumbled backward, using the staff to maintain distance. I don't want to fight you, Patrick said, circling cautiously. In my culture, diplomacy precedes combat. Vraxar paused, head tilting again. Speak your diplomacy then, human. Patrick maintained his defensive stance, mind racing. I propose that we demonstrate honor without bloodshed. Surely skill and courage can be shown without death. The predator's mouth opened, revealing those terrifying teeth again. You suggest alternative trial? Yes, Patrick replied, seizing the opening. A test of skill and courage that doesn't end with either of us dead. Vraxar considered this for a moment that stretched into painful seconds. The crowd had fallen silent, sensing the deviation from tradition. Finally, the predator spoke. Krazak tradition allows for trial of 3 challenges instead of death combat, not used in 7 generations. Vraxar's amber eyes narrowed. You would risk this? What does it involve? Patrick asked cautiously. 3 tests: strength, cunning, endurance. Fail any, die immediately. Complete all, earn respect and life. Patrick glanced toward Melissa and Zerel at the arena's edge. Zerel's antennae were vibrating with what looked like shock. I accept the trial of 3 challenges, Patrick declared, lowering his weapon. Vraxar made a sound that might have been laughter. Human ambassador chooses ancient way, so be it. The predator turned to the crowd and roared, the sound so powerful that Patrick felt it in his chest. The audience erupted in a cacophony of noises, cheers, protests, and the unmistakable sound of betting odds being recalculated. Officials appeared at the arena's edge, conferring with Vraxar in their guttural language. Zerel hurried to Patrick's side. Ambassador, do you understand what you've done? The trial of 3 challenges is legendary among Krazak. No outsider has ever attempted it. Better than certain death, Patrick replied, trying to steady his breathing. "What can you tell me about these challenges?" "Little is known," Zirel admitted, antennae drooping. "The trial is shrouded in Krazak secrecy. I know only that each challenge tests a different quality valued by their warriors." Before Patrick could ask more questions, arena attendants approached. They were a different species shorter, stockier aliens with gray skin and 4 arms. They gestured for Patrick to follow them to a preparation area at the arena's edge. As he walked, Patrick caught Melissa's eye. She still looked terrified but managed a small nod of encouragement. He tried to project confidence he didn't feel as he was led into a small chamber beneath the stands. Inside, the attendants provided water and indicated he should rest. One of them spoke, the words filtering through his translator. "First challenge begins in 1 hour. Prepare yourself, human." Then they left him alone with his thoughts. Patrick sat on the bench, trying to control his racing heart. How had a routine diplomatic mission gone so catastrophically wrong? He'd been on Nexus Station for just 3 days, most of that time spent in orientation briefings. When Zirel had offered to show him authentic cultural experiences on his first free evening, Patrick had eagerly accepted, wanting to understand the diverse species that made up the Confederation. He should have been more suspicious when they'd boarded a transport to the station's lower levels, away from the gleaming diplomatic quarters. By the time they'd arrived at the arena, it had been too late to politely decline attendance without causing offense. And now he was facing 3 potentially lethal challenges against a predator species evolved specifically for hunting. The door slid open, and to Patrick's surprise, Melissa entered, followed closely by Zirel. "We convinced the officials to allow a brief visit," Zirel explained. "As your chosen defender, you are permitted counsel before the trials." "I didn't realize I was allowed counsel," Patrick said. "You weren't supposed to know," Melissa replied, sitting beside him. But Zirel pulled some strings. "Listen, I can't begin to thank you for what you did out there. You didn't even know me." "Don't thank me yet," Patrick said grimly. "I might have just delayed the inevitable." "Perhaps not," Zirel interjected, pulling out a small data tablet. "I have accessed what limited information exists about the trial of 3 challenges. The first is always a test of physical strength but rarely direct combat." "That's somewhat reassuring," Patrick said, though he doubted any feat of strength would favor him against the powerfully built Krazak. "The second test examines cunning and problem-solving," Zirel continued. "The third tests endurance, both physical and mental." Melissa leaned forward. "Is there anything we can do to help him prepare?" Zirel's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Ambassador Evans needs to understand Krazak psychology. They respect strength, yes, but they value determination above all. A warrior who continues despite certain defeat earns more honor than one who wins easily. So even if I can't win the strength challenge," Patrick began. "Show no fear," Zirel confirmed. "Accept pain without complaint, never surrender even when defeat is certain." "Great," Patrick muttered. "That should be easy." "I did some quick research on Krazak physiology," Melissa added. "They have enhanced vision in red spectrum wavelengths but reduced perception of blues and purples. Their hearing is acute but focused on lower frequencies. And their balance relies heavily on those spines along their back." Patrick looked at her with newfound appreciation. "You figured all that out in less than an hour," she shrugged. "I'm good with technical specifications, whether it's engines or biology. I thought it might help." "It might," Patrick agreed, filing away the information. "Anything else I should know?" "Yes," Zirel said solemnly. "If you complete the 3 challenges, you will be considered Krazak friend. This is significant. The Krazak Dominion has maintained isolation from most Confederation matters, but they hold considerable influence in the frontier regions. So my diplomatic mission might actually benefit from this nightmare," Patrick asked with a hint of irony. "If you survive," Zirel replied bluntly, "you will have achieved what no human diplomat has before, the respect of the Krazak." A signal chimed and the door slid open. The four armed attendants had returned. Time, one announced. Patrick stood, taking a deep breath. Thank you both. Melissa, stay safe. Zerel. If this goes badly, tell Captain Bennett I was trying to uphold Earth's values. Good luck, Ambassador, Melissa said, her voice catching slightly. Patrick followed the attendants back to the arena, which had been transformed during his absence. The central fighting area now featured a large, circular platform raised about 3 feet off the ground. On it sat what appeared to be 2 massive stone pillars, each at least 8 feet tall and 2 feet in diameter. The crowd had grown, with spectators packed into every available space. Patrick spotted several official-looking delegations in the premium seating areas, representatives from Confederation species watching with keen interest. Word of an Earth ambassador participating in a Krazak ritual had clearly spread quickly. Vraxar waited on the platform, his powerful frame even more intimidating up close. An older Krazak stood beside him, adorned with elaborate armor and facial markings. This elder raised his arms and the crowd fell silent. The trial of 3 challenges begins, the elder's words came through Patrick's translator. First is the test of strength. The human and Vraxar will each attempt to move their stone pillar to the opposite side of the circle. First to succeed claims victory. Patrick surveyed the massive stone column he was expected to move. It had to weigh at least a ton, possibly more. He glanced at Vraxar, who seemed entirely confident facing his own pillar of similar size. The elder raised a ceremonial staff. Begin. Vraxar immediately set his shoulder against his pillar and pushed. The muscles across his back and legs bulged with the effort, but gradually, the stone began to move. The crowd cheered as the predator established a steady momentum, driving the pillar inch by inch across the platform. Patrick approached his own pillar, placing his hands against the rough surface. He pushed with all his strength, but the stone didn't budge. He repositioned, trying different angles, different techniques, but the result was the same. The pillar remained immovable. Sweat poured down his face as he glanced at Vraxar, who had already moved his pillar nearly halfway across the platform. The Krazak's natural strength far exceeded human capability. Patrick stepped back, assessing the situation. Brute force wouldn't work. He needed a different approach. He circled the pillar, examining its base, and noticed something: the platform beneath wasn't perfectly flat. It had a subtle slope, almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. And the pillar itself wasn't perfectly cylindrical. It was slightly wider at the base than the top. Patrick positioned himself at the uphill side of the pillar and pushed not directly across but at an angle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with an almost imperceptible shift, the pillar began to rock. Patrick adjusted his position and pushed again, timing his effort with the stone's natural wobble. The pillar tilted, then fell onto its side with a thunderous impact that shook the platform. The crowd gasped. Once horizontal, Patrick could roll the pillar, still enormously heavy, but now manageable. He put his shoulder to it and pushed, setting it rotating across the platform. The stone gathered momentum, rolling faster than Vraxar could push his still upright pillar. The Krazak noticed, amber eyes widening in surprise. Vraxar abandoned his methodical pushing and threw his full strength into a desperate effort to outpace Patrick's rolling solution. It was close, agonizingly close, but Patrick's pillar crossed the designated line mere seconds before Vraxar's reached its goal. The crowd erupted in a mixture of shocked exclamations and enthusiastic cheers. The elder Krazak raised his staff again. The human completes the first challenge through cunning rather than strength. This is unexpected. Vraxar approached Patrick, those amber eyes studying him with new intensity. You found another way, not strength but mind. Patrick, breathing heavily from exertion, nodded. Sometimes the solution isn't about how hard you push, but finding a better way to push. The predator made a sound that Patrick's translator didn't catch, but it didn't seem threatening. The elder Krazak gestured, and attendants rushed forward to prepare the arena for the next challenge. Zrel appeared at the platform's edge. "Ambassador, that was remarkable. No one expected you to complete the strength challenge." "Neither did I," Patrick admitted, accepting a container of water from an attendant. "What's next?" "The test of cunning," Zrel replied. "But I warn you, after your clever solution to the first challenge, Vraxar will be prepared for unconventional thinking." The arena was quickly transformed again. This time, a complex labyrinth of transparent barriers filled the central space, creating a maze-like structure. At the center sat a pedestal with two identical objects that resembled ceremonial daggers. The elder Krazak explained, "The test of cunning requires both participants to navigate the crystal maze, retrieve the sacred blade, and return to the starting position. The barriers shift and change. Touch any barrier and pain will follow. First to return with the blade claims victory." Patrick studied the maze. The transparent barriers were nearly invisible, their edges only faintly outlined by subtle light refraction. As he watched, sections of the maze silently reconfigured, changing the paths through it. "The crystal maze tests perception as well as intellect," Zrel explained quietly. "Remember what Melissa told you about Krazak vision?" Patrick nodded, recalling her words about the predator's visual spectrum. "The barriers might be nearly invisible to normal human sight, but perhaps they reflected light differently in the red spectrum that Krazak could see more clearly." "Participants, take position," the elder commanded. Patrick and Vraxar moved to opposite sides of the maze entrance. The elder raised his staff once more. "Begin." Vraxar immediately entered the maze, moving with surprising caution for such a powerful predator. Patrick followed more slowly, studying the subtle light patterns. He noticed that where the barriers intersected, there was the faintest blue shimmer, almost imperceptible, but visible if you knew to look for it. Remembering Melissa's information about Krazak vision, Patrick realized he might have an advantage. The blue wavelengths that marked the barrier intersections would be less visible to Vraxar than to him. Patrick carefully navigated the first section of the maze, keeping his eyes focused on the subtle blue markers. Across the maze, he could see Vraxar moving confidently, but then suddenly jerking back with a growl of pain as he touched an invisible barrier. The crowd watched in fascinated silence as Human and Krazak made their way through the constantly shifting pathways. Patrick moved methodically, pausing whenever he sensed a reconfiguration occurring. Twice, he nearly walked into barriers that appeared in his path, stopping just in time. Vraxar, despite his initial setback, was advancing quickly, his natural hunting instincts helping him sense the barriers. Both participants approached the center of the maze at nearly the same time. Patrick reached the pedestal seconds before Vraxar and grabbed one of the ceremonial blades. Now, he faced the challenge of finding his way back out through the constantly changing pathways. As he turned to leave, he noticed something about the blade in his hand. It had a faint, iridescent quality that seemed to react to the barriers. When he held it near a transparent wall, the edge of the blade glowed subtly. Patrick used this unexpected property to help navigate, holding the blade out before him like a dowsing rod. It gave him just enough warning to avoid barriers that would otherwise have been invisible. He and Vraxar ended up in parallel passages, racing back toward the exit. Patrick could see the Krazak predator through several transparent barriers, moving with determined speed. Both were close to the exit when the maze underwent a major reconfiguration. Suddenly, Patrick's path was blocked by a new barrier. He stopped just in time, but now found himself in what appeared to be a dead end. Vraxar, in a parallel corridor, faced a clear path to the exit. The Krazak paused, looking at Patrick's predicament. To Patrick's surprise, instead of racing to claim victory, Vraxar pointed with a clawed finger toward a narrow gap that had opened in the corner of Patrick's section, a gap that would have been difficult to notice without the predator's indication. Patrick nodded in thanks and squeezed through the opening, finding a new path back toward the exit. He and Vraxar emerged from the maze simultaneously, each holding their ceremonial blade. The elder Krazak raised his staff. Both warriors complete the maze together. The test of cunning ends in equal standing. The crowd murmured in surprise. Equal outcomes in the trials were apparently rare. Patrick turned to Vraxar. "Why did you help me?" The predator's amber eyes fixed on him. "Hunt has no honor if prey has no chance. You showed worthy skill." Deserved fair contest. There was something in the Krazak's tone that Patrick hadn't heard before, a note of respect, perhaps. He realized that what had begun as a simple survival situation was evolving into something more complex. The elder Krazak addressed them both. "The final challenge remains, the test of endurance. With honors equal, this will determine the outcome of the trial." Arena attendants cleared away the maze structure. In its place, they established a simple circular ring marked on the ground, about 30 feet in diameter. "The final test is the Circle of Pain," the elder announced. "Both warriors stand within the circle and endure escalating discomfort. First to leave the circle or fall unconscious admits defeat." Patrick glanced at Zirel, who had moved closer to the edge of the arena. "Ambassador," Zirel said urgently, "this challenge is particularly dangerous for non-Krazak. The circle uses neural stimulators that trigger pain responses without physical damage. Krazak physiology is adapted to endure such stimulation. And human physiology isn't," Patrick concluded grimly. "Correct. Your nervous system will interpret the signals as genuine pain, potentially severe enough to cause shock." Patrick looked back at Vraxar, who waited impassively in the center of the circle. After coming this far, backing down wasn't an option. He stepped into the circle, facing the Krazak predator. The elder activated a control device and a humming field of energy surrounded the circle. "The test begins at minimum intensity and increases gradually. There is no maximum limit, only will determines the outcome." A faint tingling sensation washed over Patrick's skin as the field activated. It was mildly uncomfortable but entirely manageable. Across from him, Vraxar showed no reaction at all. "First level," the elder announced. The tingling intensified, becoming a persistent burning sensation across Patrick's entire body. It felt like severe sunburn, painful but not debilitating. Vraxar remained motionless, apparently unaffected. Second level. The burning sensation deepened, reaching beneath the skin to Patrick's muscles. It felt as though every fiber was cramping simultaneously. Patrick fought to keep his expression neutral, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Third level. Patrick couldn't suppress a gasp as the pain escalated dramatically. Now it felt like his bones themselves were on fire, a deep, throbbing agony that made his vision blur. He locked his knees to remain standing, hands clenched into fists at his sides. Vraxar finally showed signs of discomfort, his breathing becoming more pronounced, spines rising and falling rapidly along his back. The crowd watched in hushed fascination as the two figures endured in silence. Patrick lost track of time, his world narrowing to the circle and the effort required to remain within it. Each breath became a conscious decision, each second an exercise in willpower. Fourth level. The pain transcended physical sensation, becoming something primal and all-consuming. Patrick bit through his lower lip trying to remain silent, tasting blood. His legs trembled with the effort of standing. Through watering eyes, he could see Vraxar was also struggling now, the predator's powerful frame shuddering with each wave of pain. In the stands, Melissa had pushed her way to the front, her face pale with horror as she watched Patrick's ordeal. Beside her, Zirel's antennae were flat against its head, a sign of extreme distress. Fifth level. Patrick couldn't hold back a cry as the intensity doubled again. His knees buckled and he fell to all fours, but critically, remained within the circle. Blood dripped from his bitten lip onto the arena floor. His vision tunneled, darkness creeping in from the edges. Across from him, Vraxar had also dropped to one knee, the predator's claws digging furrows into the ground as he fought to endure. The elder's voice seemed to come from very far away. Sixth level. The pain became impossible to comprehend. Patrick collapsed fully, his body convulsing. Somehow, through sheer determination, he kept himself from rolling out of the circle. Each breath was a battle, each heartbeat an agony through a haze of pain. He saw that Vraxar had also fallen, the powerful predator curled into himself, trembling violently. The crowd had fallen completely silent, witnessing something unprecedented, a human and a Krazak warrior both enduring beyond all reasonable expectation. Seventh level. Patrick could no longer see, no longer hear. There was only pain and the fading knowledge that he must not yield. His consciousness began to slip away. In that moment of extremity, a memory surfaced, his grandfather's voice from childhood. Sometimes courage isn't about winning, it's about not giving up when every instinct tells you to. With the last of his strength, Patrick forced his eyes open. Through the blur of pain and tears, he saw Vraxar watching him, those amber eyes filled with something that transcended their differences, a recognition of shared suffering and determination. Neither moved, neither yielded. "Halt!" The elder's command cut through Patrick's fading consciousness. The trial is complete. The pain field deactivated abruptly, leaving Patrick gasping on the ground, his body still echoing with phantom agony. Medical attendants rushed into the circle, some tending to him, others to Vraxar. The elder Krazak stepped forward, standing between the two prone figures. In 7 generations, no trial of 3 challenges has ended thus. Both warriors remain within the circle at 7th level, both refuse surrender. Patrick felt himself being helped to a sitting position. His entire body trembled with aftershocks, muscles spasming from the ordeal. Across from him, Vraxar was similarly affected, though the predator had managed to rise to one knee. The elder raised his staff high. The trial is declared complete with honor to both. The human, Patrick Evans of Earth, has earned the status of Krazak friend. The crowd erupted in thunderous noise cheers, stamping feet, beating appendages. Patrick barely registered it, focusing instead on Vraxar, who had risen shakily to his feet. The predator approached, towering over Patrick even as medical attendants continued their ministrations. Vraxar extended a clawed hand, a gesture Patrick recognized from his diplomatic training as one of profound respect among Krazak. With effort, Patrick reached up and clasped the offered hand. Vraxar pulled him to his feet, supporting him when his legs threatened to give way. "You endured," Vraxar said simply. "No human has ever withstood the circle of pain beyond 4th level. You could have outlasted me," Patrick managed, his voice hoarse. "Perhaps." Vraxar's mouth arranged itself in what might have been a smile, or perhaps not. Better to acknowledge equal courage. The elder approached them. "Ambassador of Earth, you have demonstrated the qualities Krazak respect. Strength comes in many forms. You have shown courage, cunning, and endurance worthy of our traditions." Patrick nodded, still too overwhelmed for words. Medical attendants helped him from the arena to a recovery area where Melissa and Zerel waited anxiously. "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen," Melissa said, helping him onto a medical couch. "Are you all right?" "Define all right," Patrick replied weakly. "Everything hurts, but I'm told there's no actual damage. The pain field affects neural pathways only," Zerel confirmed. "You will recover completely within hours, though the memory may linger. Ambassador Evans." The voice came from the doorway where Vraxar stood, now dressed in formal attire that marked him as something more than a mere warrior. "I come to offer formal recognition." Patrick struggled to sit up. "Recognition? I am not only hunter of the 3rd claw," Vraxar explained. "I am also envoy of the Krazak Dominion to the Galactic Confederation." Understanding dawned on Patrick. This wasn't just some random arena event, it was assessment, Vraxar confirmed. "For 10 cycles, we have observed human integration into the Confederation." Previous representatives showed respect but lacked understanding of our ways. When news came of a new ambassador, the High Council requested evaluation. So when Zirel brought me to the arena, it was arranged, Zirel admitted, antennae drooping apologetically. Forgive me, Ambassador. The Confederation Council believed direct cultural immersion would provide the most authentic assessment. And the woman I protected, Melissa, Patrick looked at her questioningly. That part was not planned, Vraxar said. Your intervention was unexpected. Instead of diplomatic caution, you showed immediate action to protect another. This impressed. Melissa shook her head. I really was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I had no idea any of this was happening. I'm a maintenance technician who got off shift and decided to see what the commotion was about. Your spontaneous courage altered the trial, Vraxar told Patrick. It revealed character that formal diplomatic exchanges cannot. Patrick absorbed this information, too exhausted to feel properly indignant about being manipulated into a life-threatening test. So what happens now? Now, Vraxar said, the Krazak Dominion will formally engage with Earth's diplomatic mission. As Krazak friend, you may speak in our councils. This has not been granted to any human before. All this because I stood between a predator and its prey, Patrick asked. Because you whispered stay behind me to a stranger, Vraxar corrected, and then endured beyond expectation to honor that commitment. 3 days later, Patrick stood in the Grand Council chamber of Nexus Station. The formal reception marking Earth's enhanced status within the Confederation was attended by representatives from all member species. At his side stood Captain Bennett, Earth's military attaché, still looking slightly bewildered by the sudden diplomatic breakthrough. I still can't believe you voluntarily participated in Krazak ritual combat, Bennett muttered. The diplomatic corps back on Earth is having conniptions trying to decide whether to commend you or recall you. I'd hardly call it voluntary, Patrick replied, adjusting the formal diplomatic sash that still felt uncomfortable across his chest. But the outcome is better than we could have hoped for. Across the chamber, Vraxar led a delegation of Krazak officials, the first formal engagement between the predator species and humanity outside of restricted military contexts. The ambassador caught Patrick's eye and inclined his head in acknowledgement. Ambassador Evans. Melissa appeared at his elbow, now wearing the uniform of the diplomatic support staff rather than engineering maintenance. The Rigelian delegation is requesting an introduction to the Krazak representatives. Apparently, your new status as friend makes you an acceptable intermediary. I'll be right there, Patrick assured her. In the days since the trial, Melissa had been temporarily reassigned to the Earth Embassy, her quick thinking and technical knowledge proving valuable as Patrick navigated his new diplomatic role. As they crossed the chamber together, Melissa spoke quietly. I still haven't properly thanked you for what you did in the arena. You've thanked me at least a dozen times, Patrick reminded her with a smile. Besides, it all worked out for the best. Earth has new diplomatic connections. I've somehow become a respected figure among a species of predatory aliens, and you've discovered a talent for diplomatic work. All because you stepped in front of me and whispered stay behind me, she mused. Funny how the smallest actions can have the biggest consequences. Patrick glanced across at Vraxar, remembering the moment of connection they'd shared in the circle of pain, two different species united by the universal language of endurance and respect. Sometimes diplomacy isn't about grand speeches or formal treaties, he said. Sometimes it's just about being willing to stand between danger and the innocent. In the end, maybe that's what all species understand. As Patrick stepped forward to make the introductions between the Rigelian and Krazak delegations, he reflected that his diplomatic mission to Nexus Station had certainly not gone according to plan, but perhaps it had gone exactly as needed. In a galaxy of diverse species and complex politics, Sometimes the simplest actions spoke the loudest. And sometimes, all it took to change the course of interstellar relations was the courage to stand before an alien predator and whisper 5 simple words. Stay behind me.